let me show you Goa because I have this connection to it.
To clarify, I have friends from all over the world. I do know what to say.
A snake has like shot out.
Hey, it's the Copacetic podcast. Copacetic.
So what's behind us and where we are sat is
Don't
the
reveal the
great state
of
of Goa.
Goa. Okay, okay. Like,
Don't
don't let.
reveal the state we're in.
I mean, the less people know, the better it is. So not everybody keeps coming in here.
I
For the
don't
longest
think
time, I was suggesting to anyone who would listen, who had the ability to make these kinds of decisions, that we should have a passport for Goa. Like, you know, like Bhutan has. Bhutan has, there's a $200. I think they've reduced it to $100 now. You have to pay $100 for every day that you're a tourist in Bhutan. They have that cap on your tourist visa costs you $100 a day for the duration of the time that you're there, and that's the budget that goes to the tourism development department, which keeps the country,
pristine.
pristine.
But then don't you think that that's cutting off a lot of people who wouldn't be able to afford that, you know?
I think you can have a allowance for things like that, like however visas work in any case.
Hmm.
I
It's a
mean,
it's
we
a
needed
strange
we
one, no?
needed to have done something to protect
The
this,
natural
what we
beauty
have,
for
what you see
sure.
behind
I
us,
don't.
because this is going,
I
it's
mean, it's
going
pretty much like, I mean, yeah, it's not gone, but it's going
yeah, like
rapidly. But
it's the development, and it's just what I mean, I've written a script about it. It's called 604.
yeah,
The whole story of what's happening in Goa and how it's happening and how people are just getting waylaid in the process of this
but is the
massive land
solution
grab.
is
But
this has the solution is the solution to like the thing is, people talk about there were eras before when it was an international community, and therefore there was a the natural beauty was maintained because that was what was bringing people here.
I
But the thing is, like, now it's a place that a lot of people from India get to come to experience the kind
I
of,
guess I'm not so much talking about the tourists who come and go.
yeah.
I'm talking about the people who come and buy, the corporations that come in and buy vast swaths of
Yeah.
the protected lands, and influence the legislation
Yeah.
where those lands that are protected get converted,
Yeah.
and the people who've stewarded this land for centuries have no say so in that matter.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I guess I'm referring to that the rules on its development become much more protective versus based on greed and whose pockets are being lined for
Which is what
the
I think.
wholesale destruction of the beauty that we live in.
There was
Yeah.
this ad, I this recent time when I've landed in Goa to come visit, I walked out of the plane and into the terminal, and there was this large ad at the airport that had this very clearly photoshopped image of some beach somewhere with some greenery, and it had the words on it said, Goa, the only place that you can have pristine beaches and green jewel nature all at the same time, like all of that, bang smack in the middle of an airport that had
That has raised
cleared
a
all
whole
of that
hill in order to
be there.
be there, and it was fought
Yeah,
off for the longest time by
yeah,
the comunidades and the local people there, the indigenous people of that area,
yeah.
for the longest time. And it was during the construction of that you know there was such a displacement of the wildlife. And at one point, on the outside the Mapsa road, before there was a highway there, we saw a black panther going on those big giant water pipes that they were
Mm.
setting up. He was walking on those, and there's the wild animals like that would never come so close to like a
Human,
mopsa
yeah.
town, but it's because of the displacement. There was such a
Excuse
wholesale
me.
Shubhkamana. There was such a wholesale destruction of that. They just raised a hill, and anyways, I mean,
What was
it's not. It's just gonna
what
keep going.
when did you come here first to Goa?
1996, 95 maybe, or 96.
And what
I
was
think.
your first feeling and thought and experience
From Dabalim, when I landed in Dabalim airport, came
when
down.
all the flights were still written in chalk on
Yeah,
blackboard?
and there was really no you. There was no like you got off the tarmac and you walked to the
Yeah.
terminal, and there was this covered port.
Mm.
It
And
was
there were
beautiful.
fans.
Yeah, there were fans. It was just beautiful. It was like every storybook romance. And I remember the first thing as I came down the steps of the flight and was walking on the tarmac going in, just the feeling before I'd ever even seen anything of Goa, just that feeling like there was a quickening in me that was just like, new place, like what's this going to be like? And then the taxi ride in those days where you came to stay in Baga, I think the place is called Hacienda, if I remember correctly. That's where I was staying. And the taxi drive in from Dabalim to Baga, I was just like, oh my God, what is this place? And the beauty, and just, it was it was like a fantasy. It was like magical what it felt like, and my response to it, it was just magical. And I'd heard about Goa growing up in California and Southern California. I mean, San Francisco hate Ashbury, right? It was all those folks that had come here in
In the
66,
70s. Oh, yeah.
1966, the draft dodgers,
Yeah.
running away from all those big protests at hate Ashbury, the protests against Vietnam, the what they call the draft dodgers, obviously the kids who did not want to enlist in the army because there was a draft, right, to enlist in the army, to be
Compulsory
yes, to
military
be sent
enrollment.
to
Yeah.
Vietnam, to be
Conscription.
conscription, yeah, draft, it was
Yeah.
called the draft. So these guys were called draft dodgers
Yeah.
because they did not want to be in the army, they didn't want to go across the world to kill people. They instead, some went to Canada, some went to Mexico, and a whole bunch of them came across to Europe, and from the UK crossed over and then got a VW van, a bus, and drove overland to land in India,
Like
in
through
Goa,
like Afghanistan and
everywhere.
stuff.
Iran,
Yeah.
Afghanistan, some of the most beautiful stories you'll hear of these people, and the welcome they got from the people coming through that region. And here, just the most beautiful stories. There's pictures also. Um, if you look at this Instagram account called
Vintage Goa memories.
Vintage Goa Memories, it's Nasya, your friend Nasya, who does it, and she's done this amazing archive of, like, the postmodern history of Goa from those times, pretty much from those times. But she's got lovely footage from the 50s and even earlier, whatever she's been able to find and archive. Great account to kind of get a sense of what, you know, the nostalgia of what those times were like.
Yeah.
And most of those guys have obviously passed away, but there's a couple of them that are still there in Anjuna, those draft dodgers that came across on that VW van overland to Goa. The first one, the Americans who first landed here, um, after the Portuguese had left in 1961. And my dad, who was in the Navy at the time, was part of the Armada who had come here to free Goa, right?
There's
From
always
the
this
Portuguese.
really funny story. I don't know if it's entirely true or not, but that when the Navy had showed up to kind of oust the Portuguese, that it wasn't
Oh, there
even
was
an
no
issue.
fight.
Everybody was just so
Susegad. There was
in.
no fight. They were just like,
They
okay,
were,
it's time.
yeah,
But it was also because the time had come. India
yeah,
was free
yeah,
from 47, and it was 1961. The Portuguese had still not given up this area. So, and actually, as the history goes, Goa was this land was actually going to become part of what became Maharashtra
Maharashtra.
state, and it was the the stalwart freedom fighters of Goa who really fought for. They said even if it's just this little portion that we get left with, it's our heritage culture. We want to stay a separate state, not be absorbed into Maharashtra because there's so much cultural commonality, the
Of course, the
language,
Konkan
Konkani, and
coast.
yeah, the
Yeah,
Konkan coast, the Koli fishermen. Like there's a
yeah,
whole common culture that goes down
yeah,
this whole
yeah.
Sayadri mountain range.
But I
But it
do
was a hard fought and won victory that made Goa a
a state.
state.
I do
Yeah,
feel like, I mean, in terms of shared culture, there is a lot, and like the cuisine and some forms of the language and everything. But I do feel like Susegad as a
yeah,
marker of culture is quite distinct to Goa,
yeah,
and I think
yeah.
a lot of people think of it as,
Ascribe it to laziness, but
yeah,
it's
but
not
it's
at
not at
all.
all. That's what,
It's
and
not lazy at all.
I've
It's
never,
Susigad is actually uh, such a sophisticated appreciation of life, of the
yeah.
moments and the how a day unfolds, the rising of the sun, how you go through that day when you rest, when you work with the birds
I
at
mean, the
sunset
rhythms of
time.
nature.
Exactly.
And I've
Susigad is
always,
that. It doesn't have anything to do with laziness. And it also has to do with, maybe you want to talk about this because you were telling me about this recently, a level of
yeah.
sovereignty that has been lost to most of us.
So I've always
Yeah.
felt it in a non-verbal way. This feeling of, I understand my Sisig. I've also, you
Lived it.
raised me here,
Yeah.
so the pace at which life is lived was lived. First of all, it's not even something I ever really thought about,
Yeah.
but moving to a city like the city of India,
Yeah.
Bombay, Mumbai, and kind of growing up and having people always comment about me that, oh, you're so mellow, your energy is so
Laid back.
chill, you're so laid back, and like you would make jokes about it. You'd be like, you're so laid back, you're horizontal.
Mhm.
And I'd always be like, I don't think I'm laid back. Like I think I have lots of like hectic moments and this that, and the other, but I think
It's
it's that intangible,
it's being in the
this,
circadian of the rhythms of nature.
yeah.
It's rising with the sun, sleeping with the birds,
I mean, not that
watching.
I am able to do that so often
But we
anymore.
have very often, and
Yeah.
you know, I remember in the first Ashirvad when the electricity would be gone in the whole village during
For
the
the community that
monsoons.
doesn't know what the first Ashirvad
It was
was, it
the
was
place that in Asagaon, in the late 90s and early 2000s, we had done a restaurant and an art gallery, and that's pretty much where you grew up,
in the
in
back.
this massive palazzo, what was called palazzo, huge, big, 168-year-old, uh,
But it wasn't even like some sort of like bougie over the top kind of living,
unusual.
because at that point of time,
It was,
what you were,
yeah,
what the rent you paid for
yeah, it
a
was
place like
unheard
that
of.
was what you were paying for an apartment
Yeah,
in
it was
Bombay.
unheard of
So
what we were living
yeah,
in those days because that type of living was accessible to working people like us,
yeah.
and artists, poets, musicians. That's what the whole Goa
Which
thing
is
was
why
about.
so many people from all over the
Yeah,
world were attracted to it,
yeah.
because you could have a quality of life
That
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 was
wasn't,
unattainable
yeah,
anywhere
elsewhere.
else,
Yeah.
and but to finish my thought about Susega, it's actually the first time I've fully understood and been able to define it in words borrowed. I saw an interview of a Goan man from Margao. I will link it below.
Yeah, a well-known actually activist, in fact.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it was on the Homegrown India's channel, and he was talking about how so many people perceive Susegad to be laziness,
Hmm.
but it's not. It's a culture and a way of life that's come from sovereignty and autonomy
Yeah.
and having home industries and working with the rhythms of nature and the circadian rhythms of life and choosing when you were going to work, and all your work being at home, and therefore you were at home. Yeah, sure, if you wanted to take a nap in the afternoon, you would. It wasn't taking away from your quote unquote productivity, and also you were never dependent on any industry other than your home industry,
I think the
the
biggest thing,
fishing, the farming,
yeah, I
all of
think
it.
the biggest thing that he said is you didn't work for someone
That's
else.
what
It
autonomy.
was autonomy and sovereignty of generating your income and living from your land, from farming, from fishing, from
Income, living, and your
fruit.
own sustenance. there
Exactly.
was there was
So
nothing you had to
yeah,
look to anyone else
yeah,
for. So
yeah.
I think there is a stereotype of people in Goa and Goans that I think a lot of people coming here now feel and are frustrated by, and they're like, oh, why do things not happen on time? And really, what you're saying, you're not saying why do things not happen on time, you're saying why are things not happening on my time.
And the pace that you're used to from the urban Western European civilizational perspective,
Yes.
where busyness is so valued, and like, I'm busy and I'm hard at work and I'm just
Yeah.
boom 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 going, where yeah, you're working, you're a cog in the wheel
Yeah.
serving a system, versus Susigad was about being autonomous, being sovereign, being your own boss, living in a way that
Having
didn't
a well
make
lived
you
life.
having a well lived life.
Yeah. you
But
know
so this was how we had lived in those times, obviously not like Goans, but the closest you could get, being from not from Goa and coming in
yeah.
from outside, where yeah, the example I was going to give you is, going through the rains and having peacocks and monkeys in your garden, the civet cats that would live in the roof, and well water that you drop that would come through the rocks, and just the most pure
It
beautiful water you
actually
can
tasted
drink.
sweet.
Yeah, it's
It
beautiful
tasted
water.
sweet.
um, and when the electricity would go out in the village, and this property that we were on was 5 acres of forested lands, most of which is now gone. It had this ancient banyan, I don't know how many hundreds of years old. It had a chiku tree and a neem tree in the front that were older than the house, so everyone from the village would come to take twigs and barks and leaves from the neem tree, because it was used for medicinal
Medicine.
purposes everywhere.
And I remember I don't know if it was in the monsoons or in the summer, the neem tree specifically would just look like it had been lit up
Yeah, because
because it was packed full
of
of
fireflies.
fireflies.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It
And I
was just the most beautiful, beautiful life, honestly.
and
It was
speaking
really a
of
beautiful
the
life.
changes that have occurred, I think one of the biggest, not biggest, but a strange kind of like marker for me has been not seeing
I
fireflies
know.
anymore. And when you do
No.
now, it's this one off and you get so excited. Whereas,
Yeah, it's very rare now to see it, unless because there was so much jungle, and we
yeah,
had weather.
yeah,
We had an actual winter.
cold,
November, December,
freezing
January,
cold
February,
winter. Yeah,
it was cold. You'd have to wear
yeah,
jackets
yeah.
at night, wake up in the
My
morning, there
nose
would be
would
the
get numb on the
fog.
Enfield.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We had actual weather.
Yeah.
We had a winter, we had a spring, we had a monsoon, then we had
Mhm.
the post monsoon, and then it actual weather. And now it's kind of more and more every year. I notice it's getting more and more uniform and flat, and kind of like the same low grade heat throughout the year, because the trees, because the foliage, because the jungles have been decimated and continue to be left, right, and center. What's happening? It's just
It's so strange to me how
what's happening
everyone
in
who
Goa.
comes here, who wants to be a part of this ecosystem, who wants to have a home here, which I completely understand.
Mm.
I don't not understand the desire to be a part of this kind of world and community. But it's so strange that the reason that everyone is coming here is for that, for the nature, for the peace, for the serenity. But in their actions in laying claim to the land by buying up swaths of land and raising it to the ground to build their whatever their ideas of Goa homes are, they're destroying the reason that they're coming here.
I mean, that's classically what happens anywhere where gentrification comes in, right?
Yeah.
And in my life, what I've known it to be, and I've seen this happen in New York through Greenwich Village. I've seen it happen in LA, in Venice Beach, and what happened to that, and downtown LA. I've seen it happen to Bandra. I've seen it happen here, which is, initially you will have like the creative people,
Mm-hmm.
like the really creative, independent, free thinkers, who will migrate or go towards a place and start creating a community,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it's creative and gay community. This is how I've always known it. It's the gay community and the creative community who are sometimes one and the same, who'll all come together. And you know, a certain style of life, maybe you can rent bigger places, so you have studios where people do work on
Hmm.
larger scales or installation work.
And
And
also be feeling attracted to like the Susigad way of life, not answering to anyone, not
yeah,
working for
yeah,
anyone. That create the creative is naturally
yeah.
inclined to finding spaces like that.
And the writing, because it gives you that isolation, solitude, and quiet that you need as a writer at the work that I do. um, so you see, and the gay community, because I mean the gay community as I've known it has always been at
On
the
the tip.
on the tip and the front edge of any kind of evolutionary, cohesive force that changes societies and
Hmm.
nature.
Hmm.
um, the nature of
Hmm.
societies and communities.
Hmm.
And I've seen it consistently where that happens. And then there's this world created that's really like beautiful and inviting and vibrant and fun. And there's art being made and incredible work coming out of those places. And then come the others after it, who who didn't want to make that pioneering work. Because having said all this, it's not easy. When you come to live in a place like this, you don't have an income, you have to generate your
Hmm.
own income,
Hmm.
you have to set up for yourself. There are none of the facilities of the urban kind of city life that you've been used to, and you've got to it's kind of like going back to square one. And it is tough. It is tough. It is a struggle to pull yourself up and try and make a living and afford it and be able to pull it off. um it's not easy. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's not this
By
idealized vision of being on the beach with your laptop.
Oh yeah, no, no, no. You're not on the beach. We didn't have laptops then at
Yeah.
that point also, but yeah, no. You're lucky. In fact, it was kind of a standing joke is that all of us in those days, La Plage, us, there were a handful of the big
JNAs.
JNAs, there were a handful of places, Fiesta.
Mm.
And the funny part of it was we would never ever see others who lived here and had restaurants and did the work here. We'd never see them or meet them. Hardly ever. If you ever ran
Yeah.
into each other, it was when you were going for supplies to MAPSA, restaurant supplies, or
Or a school pickup.
or a school pickup or
Yeah.
drop off. You would never
Mm.
meet them. And then at the end of what in those days used to be
Because
season,
then you actually had a season.
yeah, then
Yeah.
you'd stagger your closing dates, your closing parties for the season. You'd stagger them so each of us could finally go and meet the others, those restaurants and those owners and everyone who lived here, who you'd never get to meet otherwise, because you were always like, slammed working, doing your stuff at the restaurant or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And you never got to see or meet each other.
Yeah.
So we'd stagger our closing dates so that everyone would get a chance to come to the other's place, and
Mm.
similarly stagger opening dates at the beginning of the season, so you'd get to say hi, we're back, hey, and all of that before you went into that slammer of a 6-month schedule where you were like full on work.
I also love that there was that kind of rhythm as well, beyond the daily rhythm of, nature, circadian rhythms, that there was actually a season that you were like,
Yes, season.
nose to the grindstone, going
6 months
hard for
hardcore.
6 months, and then there'd be the monsoon, and then you'd
What?
travel, you'd check out, like people might go and see other family, or you'd be in Goa, but you'd be,
Yeah, monsoon, there was, in those days there was nothing.
yeah,
There was nothing.
yeah,
I remember in Ashirvad there were days when I'd be surprised by the sound of my own voice, by hearing my own, because there was nobody to
yeah,
speak to. You'd not interact with people.
yeah.
It, like, if you heard a car or a bike going by on the road on the Ashirvad Rua de Boa Vista, when you heard a car or a bike, sometimes you'd be like, oh, who's going by, like who's
Because
come in the
more often than
monsoon
not,
and all.
you'd know who it was if
Yeah,
they were
coming to
around.
your place. Or
Yeah,
it was like it was just such a different kind of truly outpost living,
yeah,
like outpost far out at like the edge of human civilization,
yeah.
as it were,
Now
because
it
the
kind of
way it would
feels,
go completely like quiet in the monsoon, and just the rain and the complete fisan nature, like full on takeover of nature.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful. And I
Now,
think, yeah, one of the most beautiful sights is the neem tree, and also looking out from the back, the upstairs back window
oh,
of
to
your
the
room.
hibiscus.
Yeah,
No, not
the,
hibiscus.
the tree that would be there.
Yeah.
I think it was a, I can't remember which tree it
With the
was.
red flowers.
The gulmohar. No, it wasn't that. It
Gulmohar.
wasn't that. It
But
was
we had a
another
big,
tree.
beautiful
Yeah,
gulmohar
and the
tree.
banyan.
Yeah.
But this tree was, it was a fairly new, I think it was a neem only, but it was a baby, not a full grown. It was a growing neem.
Mm-hmm.
And on monsoon nights when the electricity would be gone in the whole village, just like she's describing, just like opening the back window in the middle of the rain and just seeing this drape of glittering fireflies on the tree,
Yeah.
just beautiful. It was just, I cannot describe the beauty of Goa then.
Also, just
And
like amazing little, like tiny sparks of memory of something like walking around our garden and going to pluck bimlis that were growing on another
yes,
tree and like just
the,
eating them. I remember I ate
yeah,
bimlis. I don't know what the name is in English or in
it's like
Hindi.
a sour fruit that looks like a
Yeah,
mini cucumber. It's
it's kind
called
of
bimli here. I think it's
crunchy.
called bimli everywhere.
Yeah, but it
Maybe,
was
I don't know.
I
Yeah.
used to love, I mean I still do love sour so much, but I remember I ate so many that I think the next day or the day
One time,
I
yeah, yeah,
lost
yeah,
my
you lost
voice
your voice from the
completely.
khattai of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but just that, like that you could pluck something in your garden and just eat it, you know?
And in on the beaches, some, if you went at night, you'd see phosphorescence on the waves, like
Mm,
Anjuna Beach. There was that glowing phosphorus
mm,
that was because of the waters being so clean.
yeah.
And you
Also,
didn't, to go to the Morjam, and all those beaches were like really
because there was
outlier
no
because there was no bridge.
bridge.
We used to take the ferry across,
Yeah.
and there was nothing from Morjam till Arambol. That entire stretch was just empty, beautiful sand beaches, just pristine, beautiful, stunning beaches. We've seen so many turtles hatching there
Yeah.
because it was just, that was just their turtle nesting
There was
grounds.
that,
Just
we used to call it
beautiful.
Turtle Beach,
Yeah, it
no?
was just turtle
Yeah.
nesting
Yeah.
grounds.
And there was another
And
beach I remember from my childhood. I think Coco Beach. It's not even a beach
Nehru,
anymore now.
yeah, it's not there.
Where we would walk around and you would just find mother of pearl discs.
Yeah,
Just so many
yeah,
mother of
and
pearl discs.
those brown seeds also off that vine
Yes.
on the, and the Shiva's eye, those
Yeah, those
Shiva's
little
eye. There was
shells.
so much,
It really was
such beauty in nature. It
like
was
a fairy
paradise.
tale
It was
childhood.
paradise.
When I think about my
Yeah,
childhood and growing up, while it was happening, it just was like I just lived here and there was nature all around, and
yeah.
our playtime was our playtime, and we'd go to the beach every week, and everything was abundant and stunning and beautiful and quiet, and it was amazing. But it's in retrospect, when I think about certain distinct memories and experiences, is that I'm so aware of like how amazing and magic that is. Like
It was a magical
what a
childhood for,
childhood to have
yeah, it
had,
was. That was one of the biggest reasons too for,
to move there.
when in Bombay I was doing like 18, 20 hour shifts on shoots and music videos and like whatever we were doing in those days to survive, right? And I remember when you came, one of the videos I shot, Boogie Woogie, which went on to be whatever. It's like a cult classic amongst us. Anyways, a lot of people remember it.
Will
Um,
also be linked below.
yeah. Um, I did that with you, like tied on a sling across me, as a baby.
You directed that
Yeah,
with me
yeah,
tied in front of you.
yeah, yeah,
Love
yeah,
that.
yeah. It was an amazing experience with all my friends, and got them all dressed up, gave them all a shot of, Daddy gave them all a shot of vodka and said, like, "Let's go do this,"
I love that.
and made that really. And you can see the fun and the joy in it too.
Hmm.
But you know, having a baby and being in Bombay on set and in production, the work I did, directing, writing, producing, it, there was such a discrepancy between wanting to give your child a certain kind of life, and then in Bombay, the, what all you have to do just to survive, and pay the bills and all of that stuff. And
Hmm.
I was very clear I didn't want to do that
Hmm.
with a brand new baby there, that I knew I didn't have the kind of life where I could leave you with the staff and all of
Hmm.
that stuff to be
Hmm.
looked after. I
Hmm.
had It was a hands-on life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the idea came from, to come to Goa and start something that I could do from home, so I could be, I could be near my child
So that's why
the whole time.
you came to Goa, and that's your kind of jump off point and
And so you'd have,
connection.
so I could raise my child in clean air, nature. And just to tell you, one of the things that there are two really very impactful memories that hit me and stayed with me a lot about Goa life, And one of those things is that in the city, when you see your child, it's always at a very proximate distance. You're always seeing people and your child at really close proximate distances. And this thought came to me very early on in Goa when we took you to Morjim, in the ferry and all, and we would go there on the weekends, on the day off from the restaurant
Mm-hmm.
with Simba, and just be in those empty stretches of beaches. I'd see you as a speck far down the beach, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Right.
and you'd come running, and just that, the expanse of space, and
Mm-hmm.
to have that vision, that ocular perception, changes your internal makeup, when everything is at a proximate and hemmed in
Mm-hmm.
like it is in the city. it you operate with a very different framing and orientation
Mm-hmm.
on life. And here, that expanse of space, like, you can imagine what it does inside your mind to that expansiveness of thought and freedom and
Mm-hmm.
openness that comes with that, and to see your loved ones in spatial awareness that's very, very different than it is in a city.
I've never thought of it like that. That is,
it was
yeah.
very it was very clear, like, it came so clearly to me, to say, like, in Bombay I never would see my child from a far distance. It
Mm-hmm.
was always like within 5 or 10 feet of wherever we were, right, that
Yeah.
I would see you, maximum 20, 30 meters, but you'd never see someone, like seeing a tree far away or something really at a distance.
Yeah.
And one of the other things I remember, again, during monsoon times in Ashirvad, when everything would be quiet, just before the monsoons, in fact, in the heat of summer, when those crickets come, the sound of the crickets, in
Yeah.
ululating waves
And the
through the day,
coils.
and the coils, and
Yeah.
just the heat that makes everyone just stand still because you can't move.
Yeah.
That heat, that summer heat, which is also a clear indication of what?
It's gonna rain.
Mangoes.
Oh my
And
god. Yeah.
so one of the clearest memories I have of this, I told you that it would get so quiet after the season would be over, that if you heard a sound on the road of a vehicle or a car, something going back, if you were around, you'd go peek to see, like, what's going by on the road, because it was so rare.
Yeah.
And one time I heard this kind of like a rady sound, like, it's hard to describe the sound of what it was. And I saw a bullock cart going by. I don't know what was in the back. There wasn't much, but obviously whoever it was had offloaded.
Right.
But there was no driver. There
Oh.
was nothing. It was just the cart and the bullock very lazily going down the road to the right from where Ashirvad is.
Yeah.
And I was looking and wondering, like, looked down the road, looked up the road, like, there's nobody around. It was just this empty bullock cart just meandering down the road, right?
Right.
And behind it was that red truck that would always be parked in
Yeah.
that foliage.
Yeah.
And it was a good few minutes later that I saw a man coming down, and I don't remember what he was wearing, but he may have been wearing kind of a dhoti pagdi kind of scenario,
Mm-hmm.
and a turban he had on, which was a different kind of thing, I think, for the heat. And he had in his hand 2 3 mangoes, and he was just biting off the pith and peeling and eating it as he was going, with the rust rolling down his arm, and he had a lathi in his hand. And I knew very clearly he's the bullock cart driver. But, like, what a vision, like that freedom of, like, you're just picking the mangoes as you go, the bounty of the earth,
And
the
that's,
bounty, the beauty, the richness, the givingness of the earth, and that kind of life. It was just
yeah, and that the pace of it
beautiful,
also, where you've
just
done what you need
beautiful,
to do, your bullet cart's ahead of you, you're
just
following
beautiful.
behind, like, yeah, just that
That's
ease.
Susegad. That
I
is to say God.
I've had this question come up. I think it came up a lot for me when I was a teenager. Um, because that's kind of, I think, a point of time when you feel, oh, that's the poem, man.
Yeah.
I hope we don't miss it.
Thank God for small blessings. This still goes on. We in our little village where we live in our little wado, which I'm not going to tell anyone about because this little secret spot you see behind us. This is an expanse of paddy fields that
Yeah,
goes on
that is
for
still
a
there.
lot. It's
Yeah,
still there. It's
yeah.
still there. You could come out here naked and it'd be fine because there's no one around to
Around.
see you. It's just the empty paddy fields. And we do get peacocks. We have a whole family of peacocks here.
But
And we do get monkeys still.
the,
And civet cats, mongoose,
and wild dogs.
wild dogs, what are those with the porcupines,
Yes. Snakes.
monitor lizards. Yeah,
Snakes.
so
I was
protecting this, I'm gonna
walking
protect this a lot
I
for
was
long.
walking in like under our little, I guess,
Oh
like
yeah,
corrugated roof to like
the
protect the car
garage. Yeah,
from the rain. I don't want to say garage because it's so like open.
I mean, it's an open garage. It's a
Yeah,
carport cover for
yeah.
the car. Yeah,
I can't remember if
but
I
you
was
have to say
getting.
that it's under a whole banana
Of course, like
plantation and lots of
you
foliage.
can
You can see
see
behind
behind,
us. Yeah.
and I can't remember if I was getting out of the car or
No,
just
you were.
walking
We were in the
under.
garden, and you were walking that way towards the
And
compost.
I've walked out, and literally a snake has like shot out
Yeah,
and dropped right in front of me,
and
and
gone into
and
the
just gone out.
bushes.
And
Yeah,
like I didn't like scream or anything because you, I don't know, like I don't, I'm not like freaked out or scared of snakes or bugs or anything, but I mean, it was a
startled.
snake shooting out,
Yeah,
so I was like froze, and I was
mm,
like, where does that,
yeah,
where else would I just be walking along and have a
yeah.
snake shoot out
Crocs.
in front
We
of me?
just
Oh
Jay and his
yeah,
friend
my
just went the
brother.
other day and saw a crocodile come up from the river.
Yeah, yeah. So it's nice to still have, in a
Yeah,
way, that kind of
yeah,
connection to all that is around you and
yeah,
not feel like you're some sort of apex isolated
yeah. I mean,
creature.
we are, but
But
still, it's a
doesn't,
little enclave
yeah.
we've managed to keep
But what I was
pristine.
saying about being a teenager, this kind of experience question that had come up for me, I think I say teenager because that's when you, I think, are really finding markers of your identity and attaching things to yourself and kind of formulate who you are. And I think a big thing for me was that I'm from Goa. I'm not from Bombay.
Mm.
And I mean, it's
Both.
true.
It's
Both are
both,
true.
yeah.
But like I grew up in Goa.
Yes,
That is
yes, you
true.
did. You absolutely did.
And I I I wonder what, and as I've gotten older, and I've had a few experiences with my friends, acquaintances who've tried to like lay claim to Goa in a particular way, like being like, oh, when my friends visit, I must bring them to Goa to show them Goa, and I've always kind of been like, why you like why, what is it, what is it about Goa and you and your experience with it, having not grown up there, having not been there? Why do you feel this like? What is the desire? And there's a distinction between it. There's obviously like everybody and their mother's dog in India will be like, if you're coming, to visit India, we must go drop by Goa on your travels. And then there's the kind of thing of like, let me show you like Goa and what it means to me. I feel like there's a distinct difference between, people having friends from all over the world and just wanting to like show them one of the many amazing places in India versus this kind of desire to be like, oh, let me show you Goa because I have this connection to it. And I've always wondered, what is that? Why are there so many people who are, like you said, I guess the newer immigrants, or not even immigrants, but like have had like one or two experiences in Goa and have this intense attachment or want to lay claim to it? Like, why do so many people
Everybody
want to
wants to
lay
lay claim
claim?
to Goa.
But why? What
Everybody
is
wants to
that?
lay claim to anything that's beautiful and profound and has a history and a reputation, especially in the recent past. That was kind of, I think, for the younger generation, because of the whole trans thing that happened out of here,
Mm,
was huge. It
yeah.
was like a global, like, youth quake. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody had heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
And like I've told you, for me it was just like anybody in the music industry. It was a pilgrim. You had to make a pilgrimage to earn that credit of having seen it and done it and been there,
Right.
in those late 90s,
So
that
it's
at the
the
peak of it, it was just, of course, to want to be affiliated to whatever is like the cool thing going on. And I think Goa still has that.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely,
So
it still has. So it is.
it's,
It's just a classic. Like anything that is beautiful, cool,
yeah, you want to,
distinct, you
of
want to
course you want to be
associate
affiliated.
yourself with it.
That's what the whole gentrification move comes from,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's true.
That's what all of the gentrification comes from, is like, if you see something that people have had and it's beautiful and it's pristine and it's really like evocative, like it has been here, you want to be a part of it, you want
Yeah.
to make a life here. And I think a lot of people who've come here, the individuals, we're not talking about the individuals are obviously attracted here for the same reasons we
Oh
were
yeah,
in our time and the
obviously.
people before us.
Yeah,
But we're not talking about those individuals, because those individuals, when they come, or families or whatever it may be, they grow that community
of
of beauty
course,
and enhance that
of course.
creativity and bringing an aesthetic and,
Yeah,
their own vibe and their loveliness to a place.
yeah.
What I'm talking about is like this whole hog, like, come and I'm gonna buy, like, dhabaka land and then put 50 villas there and sell them at, like, what the heck? That's never been what Goa is
Yeah,
about.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a tragedy to see that happen, because it really
of
is,
course.
we're losing a jewel here. And this goes all the way to Mollem and
I was just gonna
the
bring that up.
biodiversity of Mollem, the east and north of here, that goes across many areas of the Sayadri range, east of the Sayadri range also. It's a biodiversity hotspot, and there is no other equivalent in the world. It's compared to the Amazon basins. It's that m- big in its importance, in its value. And what's happening is we're losing a real gem on the planet, like one of the lungs of the planet,
I hear you.
and
I
the
know.
beauties on the planet,
Yeah.
like, and the citizen movement that has been fighting for so long to
And has
protect
had
Mollem.
several
Several
successes.
successes, but
Yeah,
also setbacks, because
of course.
who's at it, who are the developers, who are
Yeah,
their partners, who are backing them, the financing they come with, all of that.
yeah,
It's a big challenge to take on and go up against. But I mean, more power to that movement, like my Mollem, the citizens movement.
yeah.
And it's just regular, daily, everyday people in
Of the
Goa,
land who want to keep,
yeah, protecting it.
protect it.
And
Yes.
more power to them for everything that they've done so far. But
Yeah.
that is it's that level of tragedy, because these places have taken so many thousands of years to reach the level that they have, the biodiversity of like an Amazon basin or the Mollem sanctuary. And it is a sanctuary,
Yeah.
so it's even that much more shocking that it's being
Developed.
developed the way it
Yeah.
is.
Do you think that there are any other places like Goa, or there will be, or there have been? In the sense that, like, of course, there are other biodiverse, beautiful, natural um, reserves of, land and community in the world. But do you think that, like, for me, I think there is nowhere else like
No,
Goa, but I don't know if that's
no,
just because I have such an, I grew up here,
no.
I have an
There,
emotional connection to it. Is that it? Or have you traveled, when you
sure,
have
it
been around the world, do you feel like this
there
is something?
no, there, every place, of course, there is the value of the metric of your connection to it and your feeling for it, and you know your emotions around it, all of that. But all of that notwithstanding, no, there is no place in the world like Goa. Like what happened here, and I'm not just talking about the last 50 years of the postmodern history with the trance and the hippies and the blah 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 blah. I have my own opinion about what all that is. Also, it's kind of like it's a soft neocolonialism as well. What happened here? I mean, like, what did happen here? We had a bunch of folks from the West, refugees from the West, come here and find like really innocent people that, in a lot of ways, were taken advantage of. Like what was happening here, the hippies, like this whole hippie myth, but I think that's another episode,
No,
right?
no, we're here.
Oh, this is the episode?
I mean,
The hippie myth?
we're gonna be talking about the 70s also at a later point, so maybe we
Oh.
can expand on it at that point.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there've been so many, there've been so many kinds of groups that have been here. You know, the hippies, the true hippies, or the trustafarians, and then to me, I
The
feel like there
ravers,
are
the transers, the
yeah,
Israelis,
yeah.
the Italians.
And
I mean, the first one in this most recent wave, the hippies, it was like I said, the draft dodgers, the Americans who
yeah,
came here.
yeah.
And then came, I think, after them were the Italians that proliferated in here. And
I've
for them, it
always
was
had a
obviously also the trade of the incredible, hash that was coming from India that was being shipped around all around the world. That was what, no, it
right.
was a big part of what was happening
Yeah,
here in that whole trans scene, right?
yeah. I think what
And
I've loved about, I mean, there's the, I'm sure there's issues with it as there are issues with everything, but I think I kind of loved all the years growing up here and leaving and coming back and seeing, which particular international community has influenced a particular
and
area
taken over.
in enough of a pointed way that the signage around and the
Oh
menus
yeah,
change
yeah.
language.
The menus are in that. Tea time in Goa as the sun sets and the boy man's gone. It's evening time, things are settling down, birds getting to the trees.
And the phone is organically shutting off and we might
Yes.
just stop. End it. But I think what we were saying was that
The menus changing
yeah, and
languages
they're
and
just like how there's been, and I think I think beyond Goa, India has historically always just anyone who's landed up, everyone's just been like, oh, chalo, and you've just
Yeah.
kind of been absorbed
Yeah.
in and included, and
yeah. And it's so beautiful that we are like that.
I think so.
That everyone just comes and kind of merges in, and those who don't get spat back out. Like India lives up to her
Yeah,
reputation.
macrocosm, microcosm
Yeah.
as well. Like
Yeah.
whole communities and also people. Like always people talk about like if you wanna figure it all out, come on over.
Yeah, come
Come
to
on
India.
over.
Yeah.
So
So we have gone through those phases where there was the Americans, the first one, the draft dodgers in this post-mod era, and then it was the Italians for the and then it was the Israelis who were actually coming here because most of them were conscripted at the age of 18
Yeah,
for
for
two
the 2
years
years
for
of
military,
compulsory.
and we all know what goes on over there and what gets done to their minds and bodies and thoughts, and I think a lot of them were coming here
because they
to
had
recover.
no alignment with that
Yeah,
anymore.
to recover,
Yeah.
basically to recover.
Absolutely.
And there was a point at which there was something here called the Goa syndrome, because these kids from Israel, when they came here after their 2 year service in the army, a lot of them just didn't go back, couldn't go back because I mean,
Why would you
so,
want to?
and also so just being so messed up, coming from a society like that, just a really messed up society like that. But
And
I
being
could,
so young and having to
yeah,
experience what
yeah.
you would
Yeah.
in the military.
So it's a tragic situation too. So there was that, and then there was,
The Russians.
and then the Russians, who we love. We love the Russians the best so far. We love the Russians the best so far. Really,
I mean,
love,
no, not the best.
I
so
love the
far.
Russians the best so far.
I
I
have
think
no-
they've been the most fun so
I have
far.
no distinct-
They do the most fun parties. They're the most fun people. They're sparkly, lovely people. They're healthy. All their things that they make out of dairy, like dairy is their thing. Russians and dairy. Oh my God, Their
know what I really
almost
like?
their diet, their whole diet is
That's
dairy,
not true.
cheese, and dessert,
That's
and things like
absolutely not
so many
true.
things from
They
dairy.
make so many things with vegetables and
Also,
pickles
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
yeah.
borscht. Oh my god.
Yeah, no, the Russian.
kinda
We
really
love the Russians, by the way.
I don't know why you
in
keep saying
Goa.
we. I have
I love
full
the
affection
Russians.
for all communities.
I love the Russians. I love them all up there on the north side in their own little enclaves, and you go around there and you see their those road signs also, and the menus, everything in Russian now. And I've also got some couple of really close friends who are
I
Russian.
feel like in
Yeah.
every second or third episode you say I have friends and you insert a community.
From them.
To clarify, I have friends from all over the world.
I do know what to say.
Yeah, I know, of
Anyways,
course.
before coming to Goa.
Sure, but
But
like,
the other thing you had said, that what you had asked is, you think that there's any other place in the world like Goa? And I said no,
yeah,
there isn't.
yeah.
There isn't. This
Covered
it's
that.
like each one of us is that unique being in time. You know, the unique coming together of all of these elements that make you who you are, never before and never again.
Yeah.
And that's for every being on the planet. Each one of us so unique in that way.
Yeah.
So places.
Yeah.
So places. So I don't think there's any place. I mean, just look around us even now. The sun setting and like. Can you hear that? It's just beautiful.
Can you hear the buzz? I don't know if the mic picked up on it.
It's just beautiful. There is no place like Goa.
So
Never,
I think
never before, never again. There's no place as beautiful as Goa. Really.
so.
Yeah.
To all the hippies, all the Trustafarians,
The Goans,
all the Goans,
all the
all the
Colis, everyone.
the inhabitants of the Konkan coast, the artists who ran away and because they couldn't find community elsewhere to you know what, honestly, to all you Delhi Bombay people who keep being like, oh my god, let's hang if you're in Goa. I'm not gonna hang out with you. I love you, you all are my dear friends. It's unlikely you will see me if you're in Goa while I'm in Goa. I had friends this New Year's who were in Goa for like a week, and every night they were like, come and party. And I was like, I'm not here.
I was
Yeah.
taking her when she was like, I don't know, 2, 3. I mean, there may be judgment around this, but when she was 2, 3,
I
4
turned
years
out
old,
great.
5, she grew up around it. You know, she grew up around like the peak of that scene at the time, with all of our friends around, people involved in it, the DJs, the people who did the makers down the road, our neighbors who had built speaker stacks, and at the time they were the only ones from whom you could rent it. Like, I guess when you grow up around it, that attraction just isn't there to want to go to those
As a
New Year's
teenager-
parties and all of that stuff.
As
you
a
know?
teenager, there was no mystery around like the
Yeah.
party, drugs, and the
Yeah.
experimentation. But I mean, I think it surfaced in my 20s, not the inclination to
Yeah.
drugs and partying, but the like I'm definitely, I can often, I will say, be found on a weekend dancing completely sober until the club lights come on.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, all right, we're
But in the
done."
city.
Yeah,
In the city.
in the
Here,
city.
I've never known you to want to go
No.
to a Goa thing or a
No.
party or anything. You just like to
No.
come here and just
Yeah.
be at home and be in down the village roads.
I think Goa, the association for me with Goa is home and quiet and like peace. It's not what I think
That's
a lot
somebody,
of people.
that's one of our neighbors shooing away. I think a
I don't
bull
know
has
if they can
entered his
hear
property.
it.
Oh, okay.
But
I heard him go hurt.
yeah, I could. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's never been. I think a lot of people associate, like when I say, "Oh, I'm going back to Goa," they're like, "Oh, have fun." And I'm like, "Nah, you don't. That's not."
You do have
I
fun.
do have fun, but I'm not like.
But not that raw
Yeah, no.
fun. It's that
I'm
yeah.
here like
being in the tree line.
silent.
The fun of being in the tree line.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, there's always more to say, I think, and well, I think I've said what I can
Just
say for
incredible
now.
gratitude for
Always.
having lived this incredible beauty and continuing to have little enclaves where we have this absolute beauty as the sun sets and the trees go to sleep and our neighbors have lit their true love for the evening so you can see the fires we have ducks over there. They keep ducks. They keep geese. There's somebody
We
else
have-
down the road who keeps goats.
And
There's
we have these
chickens
two
down there.
hornbills who come and hang out.
Yeah,
like, all
outside the
time.
kitchen window,
Yeah.
they built it. They built a
They're a
nest.
couple, I think.
They mate for life.
Yeah. Do they?
Yeah,
Oh, I had no
hornbills
idea.
mate for life.
And of course peacocks.
And the coconuts and just Goa. Beautiful,
Knock on
beautiful
wood.
Goa.
Yeah.
Yeah, may it be forever and ever. May it be this forever and ever. May it just have this pristine beauty forever and ever. May this land be protected.